Hello, friend. Welcome to Legal Design Thinking in Real Life, a live series provided by Lawyers Design School. My name is Hannele Korhonen, and I'm the founder of Lawyers Design School. And today I'm here with a very special guest, Ilona Logvinova from McKinsey. And our theme of the day is the impact of design thinking and AI on the legal profession, and really about what Lawyer 2.0 can look like with this new approach to law. Hello, Ilona, welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Maybe we can start by setting the stage first. What's your take on legal design? How would you define it in your own words?
Yeah, so I think legal design, and I don't hear the echo anymore, so I hope everyone else can hear everything clearly too, but please let us know in the chat if something isn't going right. I think legal design is really, it's such a powerful term, and it's a term that I think we're just starting to hear in the industry. It's definitely a term of art and something that we're continuing to explore. But to me, it means allowing creativity to be injected into the legal profession in order to really reshape, reframe, and revisit the first principles of what our profession is. Because essentially, when you think about design and you think about design architecture and framing and anything that has design components in it, there's automatically an injection of creativity and a thoughtfulness and really it's a reimagination of what's there. And, it kind of automatically comes with outside the box thinking and something that's not obvious. And I think as lawyers classically trained, which most of us are, if not all of us, design is not something that intuitively applies to the practice of law. And so I think when you think about design, it really does have this element of leveling up the work that we're doing.
How and why did you get interested in legal design?
Yeah, so I've been interested in legal design, and that's better for me, kind of like, so as you're muting, I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't hear an echo, so I think we might be off to a good start. Okay, great. Legal design is something that came up for me actually through the work and the fantastic organization that Jennifer Leonard has done over the past number of years. And she's the Chief Innovation Officer at University of Pennsylvania. And she really brings together just a phenomenal group of thought leaders who are focused on legal design, reimagination of the profession. And there's really something magical that happens when you get design thinkers and people with imagination and vision into a room. And one point that kept coming up for me, and it was something that was highlighted through a number of sessions, was that it's a question about the operating system of our profession. And if you think about other industries and professions out there, like medicine, for example, and you look at what an operating room looked like, in the 18th century or 19th century versus what it looks like today, there is just a dramatic shift. And we see so much, I would say futurism, evolution, just updates to technology and structure and the way that the room is set up and practices and, standards and things like that. And if you look at the law and if you look at the way that the legal works, right, a courthouse or really the contracts, it really, you see that not much has changed over the past number of centuries, really. And that just seems like, given where we are now with the pace of emerging technologies, with the way that our world is shifting, with how much we need laws, because laws really are an articulation of our society, and the way that we function in society is governed by how we essentially decide to govern it, right? We really should consider a refresh to our own operating system. And that takes creativity and that takes design. And so legal design just seems to be both a necessary and a really interesting component of how we can move ahead with reimagining our own profession.
I couldn't agree more that the law and lawyers' work have not really changed in the past century or so, or even for a longer period of time. You partially answered this already, but how do you see legal design contributing to this landscape of legal tech and innovation, especially if you think about the work of lawyers?
I think one big area is around injecting design thinking into the way that we work. And I think this is a really interesting area because we have an opportunity to apply human-centered design thinking, not just to the way that we work, but to our problem-solving toolkit and to the way that we work with legal tech, right? So when we're thinking about all these new legal technologies that are coming to the fore that are generative AI powered, in order to use generative AI, we all essentially need to become a version of a engineer. And that means that we have to understand how to design and structure a prompt to ask the question in the right way. And that a true meaningful amount of expertise and thought and architecture and craftsmanship that may not be immediately obvious to lawyers who are more classically trained. And so what human-centered design thinking does is it teaches you how to frame a problem statement. It teaches you how to compose a question of how you might get to a certain output or a certain solution. And if you understand how to think in that way, then you can really set yourself up to get a broader set of solutions, a more creative set of solutions, and to be more collaborative in the process. And collaborative in real life, right? When you're actually problem solving in a room, that could involve a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of voices across an organization, or really across anything. But when it comes to applying that mindset to a data set, for example, if you structure a prompt in the right way, you can be more inclusive of a broader number of data elements, which are then taken into account when you're constructing the question, analyzing the input, and you can really get a broader range or a more precise range of output that you're looking for when you're designing that prompt.
I love how you are able to combine these, like human centricity, and then on the other side, data and technology and AI and all these like big words, but then there is this human centricity in the background all the time. What makes us humans that can actually work in our favor when using technology as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And human centricity is really something that I think other professions have started to focus on more so in the recent years. If you look at medicine, I think there has been a move to focus on the patient and understand their pain and really understand, what they're going through rather than having a more technical diagnosis at the outset. And that kind of binary view of how a profession or a practice or a professional services practice can be applied, it's either focusing on the technical or on the human-centered. I really think that's the wrong approach. I think there's a spectrum, and if we meet somewhere in the middle and we focus on human centricity and we focus on technical elements, but really find a way to integrate them together thoughtfully in the analysis that we do, that's really where we win. And that's really where we get the best solution for the problem statement that we're working with.
Agree with you 100%. 100%. I'm really curious about your thoughts about this Lawyer 2.0. And so we can dive into the kind of real world implementation of design thinking and legal design. Could you walk us through your thoughts on what a typical day could look like for a lawyer who's actively integrating legal design into their work?
Yeah, I love this question. I spend a lot of time iterating and thinking about this question, just kind of in my own mind as I go. I think the lawyer of tomorrow, and tomorrow could mean next month, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5, 10 years from now, right? I think with the advent of legal tech, I think we as lawyers have an opportunity to really upskill and to level up and to be better at what we do by focusing on the higher value work and automating away the more automatable rote tasks that we do in our everyday work, and really focus on the work where we're able to be creative, where we're able to exercise our true and expert judgment. And in this part of my answer, I'd like to plug a perspective that I think is really important, because we get a lot of questions now, or there are a lot of questions in the literature and the industry around, will AI replace lawyers, right? And I think we see this across professions. Will profession XYZ be replaced by generative AI? And the most meaningful perspective that I've seen, I can't take credit for this, but I really believe it, and I think it's well said. It's not that AI will replace lawyers, but lawyers who are effectively using AI will replace lawyers who are not effectively using AI. And that really resonates with me. And so I think Lawyer 2.0 will will be or will benefit by being an effective pilot to the co-piloting technologies and tools that are going to be increasingly available in our everyday workflows. And I think it's no surprise that, generative AI and generative AI technologies are becoming more and more popular. They're essentially becoming like our new Google in many ways, and they will be available in a right-hand way, right? Where we can let it do things like summarization, insights generation, first drafts, translation, compiling summaries, creative strategy, which I think is one of the most impactful and meaningful use cases for, these technologies. Let the tech figure some things out for you and then work with it and figure out how to then, craft a better argument based on 8 different precedential arguments that it gives you. Let it catch a lot of the data inaccuracies that you might stay up until 4 a.m. catching. Let it do that for you and then figure out what it means for you to get a better argument in place or a better creative strategy, and use the tech as your creative strategist. And I think that's really where the 2.0 comes in. It's about using the technology effectively, understanding how it can save you time and effort, but also how it can make you so much better at what you're doing. And again, I go back to medicine because I think there are a lot of analogous concepts across our 2 professions. But I think about lawyers and Lawyer 2.0 who are using generative AI as analogous to surgeons using their tool set, right? You could be a really, really good surgeon, but if you have a scalpel that's a tool that's not great, you're only going to be able to do so much. Versus if you have a sharpened scalpel and you're really good at using it, you can just level up significantly. And I think it's the same thing for lawyer tooling. We just haven't really thought about it that way. And I think that's where design and creativity comes in too, right? How can we structure our workflow so that we can actually include these tools into the way that we work? If we have better tooling, sharper tooling, more effective tooling, we can be so much better at the work that we're doing. And that is a really meaningful thing to think about.
Creative strategist. I love that language, and that can also speak to some of the fears that lawyers have towards this new technology.
Exactly.
And of course, there are many risks, and we don't have to go into those risks of generative AI in this talk. But I think because it's natural to be afraid of new things, but if you shift your mindset and think about the AI as your toolkit, as your surgeon, and then it's helping you out.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think the more that we lean into these concepts, the better off we are. And we, there's a lot of trepidation out there in the industry and really in the broader world right now about what all of this, the evolution and the emerging technology means. And I think let's not be afraid of it. Let's just embrace it. Let's get out in front of it and let's understand what this tooling needs. And let's then understand how we can double down on it and use it effectively. And I think we also might benefit, and this is the other part of how I think about design. It's not just about design in doing our work, but it's also about delivering our work. And I think if we're honest, we start to understand that people don't love to read, especially long, lengthy documents with blocks of text, that are indistinguishable and have lots of capitalization and things like that. No one really likes to read over, we lose interest. But what if we found new delivery methods in our profession? What if instead of writing a memo, you can create a data visualization or a PowerPoint, or maybe even Gen AI powered video content, right? That explains or shows what you want to say on the page. Because now the Gen AI tooling allows, text to image generation or text to video generation. There's lots of kind of mixed media formation that's allowed, and translation and just reformation, I would say. So the possibilities are really interesting. And when you start to media or multimedia and different types of presentations and really think about the design of how our delivery in our own work product can change as lawyers, I think things start to get really interesting.
Exactly. You already talked about this. I love the way you use the words like lawyers can find more meaning in their work. I'd like to explore a little bit more about this impact and the results you're seeing or expecting to see working with legal design and legal tech and AI.
Yeah, the one I'll say two things. I am a tech optimist, and I think ultimately we are in a better place if we adopt and use a technology. But I think it is important to acknowledge upfront that there can and will be frictions, and there will be tensions, and nothing is easy from the outset, right? And anything that's new takes some time getting used to. And so I think there's one really important thing to remember, and I'll start with kind of the risk and the warning, and then I'll move on to the exciting piece of it. But I think when it comes to adoption of new tech, it's just crucially important that as we're thinking about the adoption, that we're also thinking about the training and readiness for that adoption. So something that I'm focused on for our department, and conversations that I'm encouraging just across the industry as I'm participating in them, is thinking about training and upskilling in parallel with exploring new legal technologies and legal design. And that could mean, training in prompt engineering, training in design thinking. I know, for example, broader organizations are starting to adopt design thinking as a problem solving methodology just across the board, which is fantastic to see. But now let's extend that to our in-house legal departments. Let's extend that to our law firms, right? And it's interesting. I think some law firms out there are actually having their first year associate classes or their summer associate classes now be trained in prompt engineering, which is fantastic. But I think the opportunity is just, it's really available. And I think we should seize the moment and think about training and what that looks like for our profession and what it means to be. I think with the advantage of these new legal technologies, we have the opportunity to become editors versus drafters. And I think that's a really good thing, because editing is doing that first draft is really the toughest exercise. That, right? When you're staring at a blank page or you're figuring out where to start, that's the toughest nut to crack. But once you have something to work with, you're accelerated off the bat, and that it's more energizing. There's a time savings associated to it. There's, more creativity injected right off the bat. So I think that's the really interesting piece of it. The other thing I'll say is, in terms of my expectation and my hope, I think that we have an opportunity to become content creators and legal designers, all of us, not just, and not just as we're reacting or thinking about legal design, but I think in everything that we do, let's assume this as part of our identity as lawyers. And we're not taught this in law school. We're taught that we are technical experts. We review case law. We think about cases. We think about case precedent. But I think we should redefine that. I think we should redefine our own kind of existential way of working. And we should really assume this role, because everything that we do every day is a generation of content. We create documents, we create drafts, we write emails, right? We give advice, whether it's written or oral, to clients. That is content generation. And I think if we take the opportunity to think about the design of that legal work and then the creative strategy that can inform that design, we can just do some really interesting stuff.
I'm so happy that you brought up education and the importance of maybe unlearning the way that we are currently working, and then learning the new way. I think that you have your finger on the pulse of legal innovation. What's you said that large companies are already educating their staff to use design thinking as a problem solving new way to solve problems. Do you see that also happening in law firms and legal teams?
Definitely not as much. No, I think it's something that wider companies are starting to adopt, and it's a cross-functional effort. It's applied in workshops and cross-functional, problem-solving sessions, but it's not something that I'm seeing in law firms just yet, at least on a broader scale. And I think this is really an opportunity for the chief innovation officers, for the knowledge leaders, for innovation leaders within law firms, or really just anyone who's interested in training and development or associates, right? This is really an opportunity to learn a new skill. And I think exactly to your point, we have to unlearn to some extent and revisit some of these first principles that are underlying our profession in order to learn new things. And it's a little bit of a gymnastics exercise with our intellect when it comes to how we learn to be lawyers, but it's really fun and it's really interesting. And it's a way to work with other people, either virtually or in real life. And I think, just getting to a broader theme of where we are societally after the pandemic, I think we're all more so independent workers now, just by virtue of habit after, working in silos for so long. This is an opportunity to be more collaborative and to problem solve and think more collaboratively. And I would say do it with a playlist in the background. That is the best way to get some creative energy flowing. And it's really just a lot of fun.
Oh, that's an excellent tip. And I think that's also very important to make it fun, and creativity is a muscle. So you need to train that every day, and you need to use that muscle so that it actually builds up. What would you like to say to someone who's interested in getting started integrating legal design in their work? What advice would you like to give them?
I would say learn design thinking and try to apply it. And then think about everything that you're doing. Put the person receiving that work product at the center of it. Don't focus on the technicalities before focusing on the person who's receiving your work. And then the two analyses will start to merge together. And I think don't close off, something that's uncharted. Just because you haven't delivered a memo in PowerPoint format doesn't mean that you can't, or doesn't mean that you shouldn't, right? And I think ultimately everyone's a person. We as lawyers are people, our clients are people, and whatever is more desirable will ultimately win out. And I think it seems kind of silly to mention this, but it's not opaque why TikTok or Instagram or some of these other platforms are so popular amongst people. It's because we have an ability to just interact with content and imagery that's easily accessible to us. Words and blocks of text are not easily accessible. And so I think the nut to crack is, how do we make our content more appealing and more accessible for our readers, for our clients? And once we figure that out and inject design elements into it, I think we really get a chance to level up in our profession.
Definitely. When we were preparing for this call, I remember you said that nobody wants to read anything anymore, and that's the case. Nobody wants to read. It needs to be so quick and visual, and so you get the content and you understand what's in it, like, immediately.
Exactly right.
Hey, before we wrap up, does audience have any questions for Ilona? What would you like to ask or comment now that we have her here? While we're waiting for possible questions, what are you, Ilona, currently working on? Is there something that you can share? I know that you are coming to Helsinki in a few weeks,
yes.
but
I'm so excited for that. Yes. I'm working on an article or two, just extending a piece that I wrote on the McKinsey Legal blog around, lawyers and positioning ourselves as legal designers and what that means in the innovation space. Right now, I'm working on a more kind of defined approach to thinking about integrating legal tech into the work that we do. So what organizations and law firms can think about, and also just, from an innovation transformation journey in our own department, thinking about how we can bring some of these efforts forward and work more effectively with legal tech.
There's a question from Isabella. Do you think that small firms can apply legal design? That's interesting.
Yeah, I think if anything, it's the smaller firms and the in-house departments who can probably start to apply legal design more effectively. I think the change that it will take in larger firms and, the top tier bigger law firms, it's a tougher lift because it's a wider syndication effort. It's a bit more breaking with tradition. And, you need to get a number of practices on board and ultimately law firm leadership. But I think with smaller firms, depending on how, consensus driven you are, what the leadership might think about these kinds of initiatives, it might be much easier to get off the ground. And there might be more of an appetite for innovation in the first instance, especially where you can show impact and the value proposition when it comes to client deliverables. So I would say all engines on go. Give it a shot.
Yes, yes. Helena is asking, what do you think is the biggest challenge for the Lawyer 2.0?
I think adoption of something new is always a challenge, no matter how you square it. I think depending on how long ago you were trained, how long you've been in practice, it's just tough to adopt something that's new and to find a new way of working. But I think if you're able to reframe and unlearn and really show the value in something and use something that's easy, and I think this is where strategy with legal tech is really important. And this is a piece that I'm working on in my article right now. You need to be using something that's easy. So if you're adopting legal technologies, it can't be clunky. It can't be, tough to work with or counterintuitive. It's got to be like a Google search bar analog. It's got to be, something that you can use natural language to type with and then see the value in and then incorporate it into your workflows. I also think that showing and drawing the art of the possible is really important. And I think the toughest piece right now for lawyers is understanding what they can actually do. How can you actually change your workflows? It's not obvious. And so the more that we can help our colleagues, help our departments, help our firms, I think the better off we are.
Art of the impossible. I love that. And there's actually one question about the software. Not sure exactly what Ines is relating to, but she would like to know if there's a specific software helping out with legal design right now.
I don't know about software with legal design specifically, but I think even working with generative AI technologies as creative strategies when it comes to legal design, as your creative partner, thinking through, if you prompt it, even with a very basic prompt, like how can I apply design thinking to, a problem solving session or to a training session for XYZ, even that in its own right, I think can ramp up design efforts.
Absolutely. One more. Do you have a favorite AI tool for lawyers?
I think there are a number of fantastic AI tools out there. It's tough to recommend one. I think the best thing to do is just to survey the scene and see, first, don't go straight to the tech. I would say first focus on your strategy as an organization and then explore the technologies that might match your leading use cases. But I would say just explore and see what works for you in a tailored way.
Absolutely. Hey, where can people find more about you and your work?
I do a good amount of writing. I do a good amount of writing on our McKinsey Legal blog. I'm also pretty active in the thought leadership in the conversations around innovation and emerging technologies at various conferences, and also on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a fantastic platform, so I'd love to connect and stay in touch.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience with all the tech issues. I think that this summer break had something to do with my headset not working, or I don't know what it was. But thank you so much for your patience and also taking the time to come here today. And let's definitely meet in Helsinki and stay connected. And thank you everybody for watching today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.